Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the startup track of the Sri Lanka Internet Day. I think we've got a great lineup of speakers coming on board, and I'm very privileged to introduce the speaker now. I think she, in fact, doesn't need any introduction. She's a well-known figure in the region for startups. So let me just do a formal introduction, and I think we'll get into more discussions about her story and obviously the kind of work she's done, right? So Shraddha is the founder and CEO of Your Story Media, India's largest digital media platform for entrepreneurships. Shraddha founded Your Story in 2008, leaving behind a lucrative job. Since then, Shraddha has scaled up Your Story to become one of India's leading digital media platform with unique business covering every aspect of India's new economy, all the while ensuring that positive, inspirational storytelling remain the core ethos of the company. Today, Shraddha is widely recognized as the de facto voice and champion of entrepreneurs, innovators, and change makers, not just in India, I think in South Asia as well. And these figures are mind-boggling. She has 2 million followers, right? And then obviously Your Story has over 5 million followers as well. So that's just fantastic numbers. And I'm very grateful and personally privileged to introduce Shraddha to Sri Lanka Internet Day. Welcome, Shraddha. Welcome to Sri Lanka.
Thank you so much, Zulfar. I'm so excited. There's such a love for Sri Lanka. No, it's whenever Sri Lanka comes to mind, all good things and everything nice and positive comes to mind. So I'm very, very honored to be having this privilege to be talking to you and to everyone whoever is watching this today.
Thank you. So Shraddha, I mean, we are obviously our economy runs on tourism, and we love to ask someone from overseas, have you been to Sri Lanka? Have you been to Sri Lanka?
No, you'll hate me for this, but I haven't been to Sri Lanka. And I'll tell you why, because I've just been like last few years just working, but I will be coming to Sri Lanka and I will be, I want to tell more stories from Sri Lanka. So yeah, let the pandemic get over, I'll come.
Yes. So I think your first trip out after the pandemic should be to Colombo,
Okay,
right?
done. Okay, done.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So for the benefit of the audience, I mean, we've got a great number of people registering for this event, right? For the benefit of our audience, can you tell us what inspired you to start Your Story 13 years ago? And
Yeah.
what was it?
Zulfar, now it's like 13 years ago. Feels like a lifetime ago. Like, so I was in media. I was working with a news channel, CNBC, and before that, Times of India, which is the largest print publication in the country. And I come from a very small town and a very backward place in India, and especially when I was growing up, Bihar and Patna. And it shaped me because somewhere I just realized that as a country, as people, and especially if you're a middle class, and it's not just India, it's anywhere, I'm sure people watching there would relate to it, is that we don't tell, we don't talk, we're not told to talk, we're not taught to talk about ourselves, we can't sell ourselves, we can't tell our stories. And when I went to media and I started working there, I thought that everyone is just celebrating extremely successful people. How do you give voice to young people, tell their stories, give them the access, give them the reach, give them the connection, because they don't have the money, but they have a good story and they don't know how to tell the stories, and they don't want to promote themselves, because that's also very cultural thing that, somewhere you want to be recognized and you don't know how. And then that's how I thought that, we need to give voice to everyone. And I started it in 2008. Today, we have told more than 100,000 stories of entrepreneurs and startups, and reach millions of people every month. And it's been a very blessed and powerful and impactful journey, and I'm very proud of it.
You are the face of women in startup in India, right? If not in this region, right? Right. And also you're also like the figurehead for startups in India as well, right? What is your advice to the women and women entrepreneurs, in Sri Lanka in particular, but obviously in the region as well?
So I would say to everyone and in Sri Lanka and across the region, not just to women, but to everyone. Somewhere I've always said this, and I really, really believe is that as humans, as people, as entrepreneurs, we really look out that someone will come and help us, or someone will come and encourage us, or someone will come and pat us on our back. I'm just saying, don't look for validation outside, look for validation within. It's easier said than done. It requires a lot of practice to believe it. It's so easy to say, oh, be passionate, believe in yourself. But when you start deconstructing, it means a certain set of behavior that you have to follow, certain set of discipline that you have to live with every day, and then do that, because somewhere you'll see the magic of it. And I'm telling you, it is extremely magical if you start relying on your own self and anchoring on yourself, that you start seeing the results. And the second thing I would say is that be a constant learner, because I feel when we die, that's the day we stop learning. How do you learn every day? How do you up the game? How do you get better in the game? And that gives you so much. It's not just that you're improving the game and becoming better entrepreneur or doing well, but it's also, you feel very happy because you're constantly learning. So if you can, then please look out every day for opportunities to learn. And then these are habits, I think. I would say that if you do, it would be amazing. And one very small thing I would say for women and girls especially, start loving yourself. we are very generous when it comes to loving, helping, and caring and nurturing, because that's who we are. But somewhere, just remember, the question you need to ask yourself every day is that while I'm loving, nurturing, and being very extraordinary and amazing with other people, am I loving myself? And you can only honestly answer, and you'll more often than realize that you don't love yourself equally or properly, and then think, and you'll get your answer. So yeah, these are some of the things I have practiced in my life. I've seen with entrepreneurs who've been happier and done okay. So I would say do that, and yeah, it should be okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Shraddha, I think over the past 13 years, I'm sure you would have seen a lot of these entrepreneurs, right? I mean, your website says you've done about 120,000 stories, right? I think you have a trove of knowledge there, right? So, I'd like to ask you, because I thought about this while I was trying to, sort of draft these questions, right? What mistakes do entrepreneurs make, right? You're a person in the new generation, you're a new entrepreneur, right? In the new generation, I'm sure you've seen entrepreneurs come in and go, but what are the mistakes they are making?
I think, again, if you ask, if I had to see the big data set of large set of data of different entrepreneurs over time, few things stand out. I think one is that, and you would have heard, and everyone would have heard, but again, I can't overemphasize that I've seen entrepreneurs get extremely in love with what they are doing. So you have to be passionate and all that, but you don't have to fall in love with what you're doing, right? Of course, you have to love what you're doing, but you also have to have that intelligence, the foresight to say, to take feedback and know when it is working, it is not working, when you need to pivot, when you need to change. And it is absolutely cool to say, oh, this idea, I thought it would work, but it's not getting product market fit. So let me retract, let me pivot, let me do something. And it's so important to be in love with your commitment to do something, but not be in love with your idea, right? And I think it's a very thin line, and I've seen more often than not entrepreneurs get very attached, and they stop blocking, they block anything looks like a criticism, but sometimes it's not criticism, sometimes it's just feedback, and sometimes it's your well-wishers who might be saying things that you can't see right now, and they have different data sets. So yeah, so that's one I would say, is that every day ask yourself, am I getting too emotionally attached to what I'm doing, to critically evaluate what I'm doing. And the second thing I would say is that also, it's very, very important to cultivate a very large set of networks and people who could influence, because when we are early building something, then we get so inward looking that we don't invest in building a network. And the compounding effect of a very strong network is what you see has benefited a lot of entrepreneurs who have that network they can call on to raise angel money, to do so. Don't do it when you need it, but start investing in building relationships and networks, because you'll see the effect, the result of it is will be far, far more phenomenal. And I've seen sometimes some of the most brilliant entrepreneurs, they had a great idea, they worked on it, but they could not get funding, or they could not get a right set of people to back them, right? And then that doesn't happen when you say, oh, sometimes it's and sometimes it's, it might be an average idea, and you get the right set of backers, and you keep on improving your idea, and it gets better. So I would say do that. Please invest in relationships and networks, and you'll see it's again very, very powerful. And the third thing, I would say, is that always remember when to exit the playground. In terms of, yeah, of course, I've only believed that stay put, stay put, stay put. So it's again a very big dichotomy, that be married, be there in the playground, fight it out, get all the bruises, but don't leave it. But at the same time, we all have a cutoff uh, thing that you should know, that okay, I am in love, this is my baby, but I need to now let it go, right? And these are some of the very, very powerful things we should be thinking about very honestly as entrepreneurs. And that decides to a large extent if we are successful or we are not.
Makes sense. Yeah. You need to decide when you need to let it go. Fantastic. So I think you sort of touched upon it, right? Now, both Sri Lanka and India, we have very similar cultures, right? We have very similar cultures. We do celebrate success in a very big way, right? But when it comes to failures, you want to go and hide yourself, right? As entrepreneurs, right? Because society looks down on you, and it's become a problem to a lot of people. When I started my company, my parents told me, son, you better not fail because you're not going to get married, things like that, right? So it was a problem. So what is your advice for entrepreneurs on how they should overcome failure? I know it's a cultural problem as well. And we're doing, I think, as young entrepreneurs, we are doing a little bit, but what's your recommendation or your advice to entrepreneurs on how to overcome failures?
Honestly, Zulfar, I can't give a advice on that, because it's an individual journey. I can tell you, do this, do that, but failure is personal. Like success has many fathers, failures has none, right? So failure is personal, but I could just say that if you build inner strength, that it's a journey, it's a learning that I had. And today, are you looking it as a failure? Because if you say failure, then you see it as a failure. But more often than not, every failure is a very strong cornerstone for tremendous amount of learning. And you could use that as to say, oh, you could wear it as a badge of honor, but you will have to wear it as a badge of honor, that I failed, but I am today 10 times better than people who are on the not failing, not success yardstick, because I have far more experience, far more learning. And if you start looking it from that lens, you'll be so happy, enriched, fulfilled, and you'll add so much of value. Because I think today I am where I am, and I'm doing what I'm doing is not because I did 100 things right, because I've failed in so many things that it's sometimes very funny for me also, that wow, like like you could fail, but I am okay with that. I'm accepting, and the more I've accepted my failures, the better it has, and the world has accepted. So please think of it. Start thinking failure. What does failure mean? I basically have issue with the word failure, because especially in the startup ecosystem, we've seen so many unicorns, so many companies raise so much of millions of dollars of capital, but then they have shut down. What would you call the millions of dollars of raising when it gets celebrated as success, and when they shut down as failure? So who decides what is a success and a failure? So start from today thinking every day, am I learning? And more often than not, you'll say, okay, I felt bad for a day or two, maybe two people or three people in the ecosystem think I'm a failure, but I'm far phenomenally amazing, because I have far more learning curve, and I could be far more influential in the next thing I do. So, but that's what I'm saying, Zulfar. It's a very internal journey. And the more confidence you have in your own internal journey within your own self, you're able to not look at failure as success, because some of the most outstanding successes in one part of the journey go on to become failures. And some of the people whom we have seen who have written off, oh, this person will not be able to do, have gone on to become such phenomenal success. So who knows?
Yes, yes. Um, so Shad, I think a lot of Sri Lankans have been following your journey, your website, your company, and I think I've heard a lot of people saying, can I get a review from your story, right? Are you open for Sri Lankan stories as well? And if so, how does a Sri Lankan entrepreneur get in touch? with your company?
I am absolutely, I'll be honored, honestly, because I think that we all of us in our region, we are not Silicon Valley, but today a Sri Lankan entrepreneur is fighting so many odds and creating with that dream, right? The stories. We'll be so, so honored to tell all the stories. What I will do, Zulfar, and I can send you is that maybe we'll create a form and send it, which you can circulate, and everyone's story we'll like to tell. And I'll put a team which will talk to them, do Zoom calls, and do stories. And after this, also, if you think you want to do a roundtable with some interesting startups, I could do that with you.
Oh,
We're
wonderful.
very, very happy. And if we have great stories, why not the Sri Lanka story? We'll launch it in the next 2 months. Help me. We'll love to do it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that invite. And we'd love to, bring the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem together and certainly put them in front of you as well. Wonderful. Okay. So Shravan, the next question is about, you've seen the Indian ecosystem, the startup ecosystem in the last 2 decades, right? What do you think is important for a nation like us, like Sri Lanka, to benefit from the tech startups and the digital economy? Right? I just want to understand, because you've seen it all, right? From the beginning of how it all started in India, and then Sri Lanka is just getting started. I mean, obviously we've got a nice ecosystem, we've got a nice set of startups that have come up, we've got a history also in tech. What do you think is important?
I would say, Zulfar, very, very important is, and all the young entrepreneurs and people thinking, it's like some of the most rewarding journeys are when in the journey we think about everyone else than ourselves and what we. So if you think from impact, like to me, very good. If a startup is thinking, oh, if I do this, how many people in Sri Lanka get benefited? Right? Then if my startup, how many people can I help uplift? Because at the end of the day, it's about money. How many people can have a better life, better income, get better impacted by what I'm doing? Then you start looking at what are some of the technologies, what are some of the solutions. And the best way to think about anything is that how do I create less friction in our country in terms of doing anything? And when you start thinking, you get some of the most phenomenal ideas. You are able to, withstand a lot of pain, trouble, challenges, because you know that, hey, I'm not doing it to make money myself, but I'm also, maybe I want to make money, but I'm doing it to create a better country, like a better opportunity for my countrymen. It's such a high, right? Like that will help you. So the first question you need to ask is, whatever I'm doing, how realistically is it going to create impact for my country? And that means for people and people around me, near me. And if you can quantify that, you can make sure it's you doing that. That's how you think. That's how you build large, sustainable business and stories.
Wonderful. So Shraddha, I just want to ask you about fundraising, and you've had your share of fundraising as well. I was, when I looked at some of your videos, you did mention that you raised money from some of the well-known venture capitalists and investors in India. Can you just talk us through that exercise? What do entrepreneurs need to be ready with when it comes to fundraising?
Zulfar, most important is clarity and conviction. So, any investor today is looking for an entrepreneur, a person who's extremely convinced about their idea and has clarity. If you can, like for example, anything you could be doing, but if you can tell that with clarity and you have complete clarity of what you're doing, how you're going to do, how this is going to create impact, and you have a little bit of demonstrative proof of concept, then any investor will be ready to meet you, and they get very excited if you have clarity, you have proven the as we call MVP, or you've tested your clarity, build more clarity and conviction, and you can tell your story with great conviction. I'm telling you, you will have years of the best investors anywhere, because somewhere I think that is a very introspective exercise that we have to ask, is that what I'm saying, what I'm doing, does it have crystal clarity? And one of the biggest things as entrepreneurs is to every day find clarity in your idea, in your business, in your presentation, in your pitch. Is it crystal clear? And and once you do that, then I think you will get the yes. And of course, the impact, and of course, the, like everyone will say, okay, all that is fine, but you can have clarity in an idea which is small. But as investors, and we all know, people who invest or people who give funding, they're all looking for large ideas. People are looking for what's your target audience, how big is your market. So somewhere that clarity also of who is my market, how big is my market, gets you investors. And some of the big investors are looking at big market, big impact.
All right. Okay. So I've got some questions coming in as well. Just one question that someone has asked here is about, I think there's something called Her Story, right? They want to know what that is all about, and what are you doing, with this social element that you're trying to build.
Yeah. So Her Story is for women, because we thought that, and this is not just India, I'm sure people in Sri Lanka will also relate. Is that, when it comes to women's stories, it's always like, oh, she's weak, oh, she's too smart, oh, she's this. There's always a judgment. But women are so multifaceted, that how do you tell their stories in all honesty with amazing nakedness of who they are, right? And that's like giving voice to women. Is it an equal world? No. So till it becomes equal, we will have Her Story to give more voice, more exposure to women. And of course, we're building a very strong network of communities where women can help each other, and we get interesting people, not just women, who help them. Because I think there is a lot of support required. See, today we got education, we are all talking and doing things, but there are so many people who don't have accesses. How do we build that access for women? And that's what we're doing with Her Story. And this year, in fact, you will see a lot of engagements, activity, community exercise that we'll be driving with Her Story.
All right. Okay. Okay. Great. Uh, so in terms of your stories, if I just go back to your company again, what's next, right? You're doing some great stuff around journalism and bringing these entrepreneurs in. We love to know what's next for your story.
Zulfar, lots of things. One of the biggest things about life, and especially when you've done journey of such a long journey, is that, you don't want to stagnate. You don't want to be doing one thing. You become better, because over the years you become better at doing this. But India is a country of 1.3 billion people. Today, have I been able to tell stories of 2 3 million people, right? Like everyone's individual. I told you 100,000. How do you tell 2 3 4 million people's story? How do you reach out to 50 million people? How do you tell stories of people in Sri Lanka? How do you tell, go to Indonesia, tell stories? And second is, one is that, and the second thing is, how do you educate? Today people are looking for learnings from people who've been there and done that. So education is a big focus. We've launched skill learning based education programs. We've launched a lot of courses. Uh, so that is something a big. So education, we forayed into a big way. Subscription, we've launched, and now we want to go to different geographies and do the same thing and connect people, because people are looking for. If there is some entrepreneur in Sri Lanka who is, for example, doing something similar, or is in education space, or has some context, can I partner with them? Can we get more entrepreneurs? Can someone in food tech partner with a food tech entrepreneur in India? Can we do that for the region? So those are some of the things that we're going to be doing very actively this year.
Oh wow, that's super interesting. I'm sure some of the Sri Lankan entrepreneurs would love to see how we could connect with the Indian businesses as well. So that's awesome. So one other question I've just got in, I'm just trying to rephrase this, is that you're in the media company, right? You're in the media company essentially, right? And this guy was the person who's asking this question is asking, how do you make sure that you're not biased? Right? I know you make it. You do a fantastic job, being very passionate about the job. But how do you make sure your company doesn't stay biased? To maybe political or how do you make sure that? I mean, this is the question that the audience is
That's
asking.
a brilliant question. Whoever has asked a very, very, very good and powerful and very, I think, first principle question when it comes to running a media business. I would say that, how do you stay, like for us, it's easier. For us, as your story, it is very easy, because for us, the only benchmark, the only metrics, the only yardstick is that, are we entrepreneur first? Are we the voice of entrepreneurs? And when you start looking at things from that perspective, are we the voice of entrepreneurs who are trying to do something interesting? We've stayed out of politics. We don't do political coverage. We only tell stories of young people who are trying to do something, which is trying to create economic impact around the world that they live in. So when you do that, then you can't be biased, right? Because the lens is to tell stories of people. You're not telling political or ideological stories. You're telling stories of young people trying to change. And I really, really strongly believe that young people are the purest, most positive, hopeful people, and they can change the world. If you go back to history, who has changed? Who changes the world? It's not the oldest people. If the change that is happening because of young people, and we give them the voice because we hope that by making them the heroes, there will be change. And in Sri Lanka also, see you, I'm talking to you, Zulfar, you look like a very young boy. Yeah, very young man. So how do we get, I think Sri Lanka, more change and prosperity and happiness will happen if we give voices to young people over there. So yeah, so that's why for us, it's a tougher question for media companies that cover politics and different things. But for us, the anchor is only young entrepreneurs who want to change the world around them.
Thank you so much. Thank you for calling me young. I take that as a compliment.
My,
Right. So,
tell me, how old are you?
I'll tell you that later. Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. So I think we've just come to the end. Can you give us some part away comments? I mean, it's great to have you on the show. We love the work you do. Say something.
I want to say that it has been a very tough year for all of us, and I understand what tough means and pain means. I only have one request, that always I say this: life is going to be tough, life is going to be painful, and there will be so much of uncertainty, and we experienced it this year. And it's going to, you cannot plan, predict what will happen. But I just think that, we all, you, me, all of us watching together, we have that superpower within us to decide what we cannot stop the rain, we cannot stop the pandemic, we can't do anything, but what we have the superpower is to create our own life every day. I just want you to remember that you have that in you. I have that in me. It's such a simple but such a powerful thing that we forget. And that I want you to remember in your toughest, darkest days, that you have that magic in you. So remember that and go and create your own stories. Create a very powerful story and create impact. And then last is, I believe there's a spiritual power, a phenomenal power when you help people. So the question you have to ask, and there's an immense amount of happiness. So the question you have to ask in whatever you are doing, are you helping people? And if you think you have an answer for that, and if you are, I can challenge you, you'll be a very, very happy and successful person. It might not happen in day one, but you will at the end have a very phenomenal story. So think about these things, and I wish you all very best, very genuinely. And we are coming to Sri Lanka, and we're launching Sri Lanka story. And Zulfar, you are helping me in that.
I will certainly will help you. Thank you so much, Radha. Thank you so much for having you. Thank you very much. Thank you.